Earth 70 million years ago. A male Majungatholus is on the prowl for a female.
Picks up the scent of a female Majungatholus. He knows it's a female simply by her scent. He moves in cautiously, knowing that if she has a mate, there could be a confrontation.
Slowly, cautiously, the male moves further into her territory, following her scent like a roadmap.
He works his way towards the center of her territory, looking for this female. He finds her. She's in a small open clearing surrounded by very dense vegetation. He moves in and begins to demonstrate his intentions. He's not an aggressor. He is simply trying to woo her into mating. He goes through a series of steps designed to put her into a non-defensive mood. She doesn't react the way he expects, and he doesn't understand it.
The female is uninterested in his advances.
He sways slowly back and forth again to try to describe to her his intention. She refuses to accept his advances. She bares her teeth and hisses with a deep, rumbling growl. This is a clear message that she's looking for a fight. The Majungatholus male continues his dance to try to entice her, but she will not respond. She continues in an aggressive posture. The male tries to shift his position, perhaps put her in a different area, and see if that will change her mood.
But the female's focus is not exclusively on the male.
As he moves to the side, he realizes that hidden behind her is her offspring. The male knows immediately. That's the reason why the female is not responsive to his reproductive dance.
The male realizes the female will not be responsive as long as her offspring is alive.
He knows he's got to get rid of that baby. In his brain, his mind switches over from reproduction to killing. He needs to take out that baby, and he needs to do it without being killed himself.
The female becomes suspicious of the male's sudden change in attitude. Her maternal instincts shift into overdrive.
She knows he's seen the baby. She puts herself between the baby and the male as the male slowly begins to outflank her and outmaneuver her to have access to the baby.
The baby lays motionless, but the male has already spotted him. He needs to take him out.
The male lowers his head and rushes in, mouth agape, trying to grab the baby. But the female is quick to react and lowers her head and rams the male with incredible power. The male, being bigger, recovers relatively quickly and turns to face the female. He knows that he may have to attack the female in order to get to the juvenile. He doesn't want to kill the female, but he will if he believes his life is in jeopardy. Although the male is larger in size, the female can match that with incredible ferocity. She's defending her young and will fight to the death.
The male turns his attention back towards the female. The female knows that the male has seen her offspring. Enraged, she kicks up dirt like a mad bull, pawing the ground before charging. The male has got to be careful. He knows a protective mother can be extremely violent, but his reproductive urges outweigh caution.
They go through a series of steps, each trying to intimidate the other, but it doesn't work. The male is intent on reproduction, and the female is intent on defending her young. The male is intent on killing that juvenile, and the female is intent on defending him.
The male again moves in for the kill, but the female shifts sideways and swats him with her powerful tail. The male absorbs the blow and regains his footing. He launches a second frontal assault. The female again thwarts his advances. The male attempts to lure the female further away from her baby. He makes a series of mock charges and draws back with each one. Once she is far enough away from the baby, the male rushes her head on. The female loses sight of her surroundings.
She trips on the log and falls to the ground. This is the opportunity the male's been waiting for. The female Majungatholus made one fatal error. She was so focused on defending her baby, she lost track of her environment. When you place a big foot like Majungatholus has on the ground, you better be assured of your footing. And she wasn't. And that's what tripped her up and gave the male his opportunity.
The male advances towards the defenseless baby. With the female now out of the picture, he seizes his best chance to go for the kill. With his razor-sharp teeth, he grabs the unguarded baby. Although the male has made the first kill, this battle is just beginning. "70 million years ago, a baby Majungatholus is snatched from his mother. The male knows he needs to kill the offspring in order to successfully mate with the mother.
The male Majungatholus has this baby in his jaws. He shakes and crushes it with tremendous force. The juvenile lays helpless in his jaws.
For a brief moment, the jungle is silent. Then suddenly, from out of the brush, the female charges into view. The mother goes for the jugular.
She now launches an attack on the male and grabs him by the rear of the neck. Using all the power she has, she crushes the vertebra in the male's neck.
The male drops the baby as he slumps to the ground. He's unable to move.
She severed his spinal cord. He's completely helpless, but still alive. The female leans down and sniffs her baby to look for signs of life. There's absolutely no movement, and she knows the baby's dead.
Although she risked her life to save her young, the female Majungatholus is incapable of mourning.
The brain of a dinosaur works like a light switch. There's an on and there's an off. They only think of one thing at a time. They live in the very moment they're in. When she realized that her baby was dead, the female Majungatholus's brain switched over from maternal to dinner. She now sees her baby as a food source. She's got to replenish the calories she burned fighting the male. Her baby is the first course. The male is the main course.
But the female isn't fully satiated. She now turns her attention to her second victim.
He's still alive, but he can't move. He makes a perfect target, and he's gonna get eaten alive.
She leans over, rips open his stomach, and continues her feeding frenzy.
The female Majungatholus shoves her head into the stomach cavity of the male. She's seeking the most nutritious parts. She pulls her blood-covered nose out of the stomach, and in her jaws are the liver. This is the most precious part of her prey. The liver is usually the first thing predators are going to eat. It's the largest organ in the body, and more importantly, it's rich in vitamins and iron, and this is something predatory dinosaurs crave.
The cannibal dinosaur will continue to gorge until her gut is full.
This is not an act of vengeance. The female Majungatholus eats the male for sustenance, not to get even for what it did to her young.
Although these monsters appeared evenly matched, the male's miscalculations and missed opportunities cost him the fight and his life.
Had the male Majungatholus found this baby unguarded, it would have killed it. When the female would return, she would instantly go into reproductive mode because she didn't have a baby to defend. But because she was there defending the young, the moment the male killed it, she instantly attacked it in an effort to save the baby.
Despite you are about to see a graphic scenario of a violent prehistoric battle. Viewer discretion is advised. pair of adult T-Rexes are on the hunt. They must leave their babies unguarded. The juveniles are unaware of approaching danger.
Leaving their young is a very risky thing. They understand that there's dangers out there. But they've got to leave the young long enough to go out and hunt for prey.
Traveling in search of prey, the adults could be gone for a long period. The adults have left a series of scent marks. They outline boundaries for the juveniles to stay within, and for all other dinosaurs to keep out. Most dinosaurs are repelled by this pungent scent and retreat.
But one dinosaur in particular uses these scent marks as a homing device. Nanotyrannus actively hunts and kills young Tyrannosauruses. Not to eat, but to get rid of the competition. These two unguarded juveniles are at the mercy of this tyrant killer.
A Nanotyrannus knows he's no match for a fully grown T-Rex. He makes sure the adults are gone before he moves in for the kill. Senses on high alert. The two juvenile tyrannosaurs instinctively know that a predator approaches. They're too young to have ever seen a Nanotyrannus, but it doesn't matter. They're hardwired to recognize a threat and face it head-on.
The Nanotyrannus doesn't just haphazardly attack. These young tyrannosaurs have a special defensive mechanism, a mouth full of bacteria. The Nanotyrannus knows that a nip from a young tyrannosaur could potentially end its life. These are the first animals to use biological weapons.
One bite full of that bacteria, and Nanotyrannus is dead from a massive infection, if the fight doesn't kill him first. He moves in cautiously, using his height advantage to assert his dominance. He leans in, flashing those serrated teeth. Their hissing is a warning. We're not backing down. The fight's on. The Nanotyrannus hangs back, making mock lunges. It's a luring technique.
If he can get them out of the nesting area, they have no hope. But the juveniles instinctively stay in the security of the nesting area. They stand shoulder to shoulder, facing their attacker.
Nanotyrannus circles his rivals, looking for an opportunity.
The little Tyrannosaurus leaps forward and snaps his jaws and loses his footing. The Nano grabs the young Tyrannosaurus Rex behind the neck, picks him up, and throws him like a ragdoll across the forest floor. Now he's only got one juvenile left.
The lone juvenile doesn't stand a chance.
The young T-Rex seems panicked. It wants to turn and run, but instincts tell it to stand its ground. It roars as loud as it can. This is basically a cry for help. It hopes that mom and dad are near enough to hear this. The Nanotyrannus knows that the young T-Rex has just sounded an alarm. He's got to end this battle, and he's got to get out of there quick. He leans in and decides to go for a full frontal attack.
Nanotyrannus leans in again, waiting to make his lethal lunge. He's using his experience as a veteran fighter to his best advantage. The T-Rex, a rookie warrior, tries to match his every move.
As he moves in for the kill, Nanotyrannus feels a horrible pain in his left leg. He looks down, and there is the second juvenile T-Rex. He's recovered from his sling across the forest floor, and he's attacking. He's bitten the Nanotyrannus on the leg, and if that wound becomes infected, it could end his life.
This time, Nanotyrannus will make sure that the T-Rex dies. Flexing all the power of his jaws, he clamps down with nearly half a ton of pressure and crushes its spinal cord.
He throws it to the ground, and using his foot claw, he stomps the baby. Now it knows that juvenile Tyrannosaurus Rex is dead.
But there's no time to eat. One T-Rex down, Nanotyrannus moves in for the final kill.
As he leans down to take a bite, he feels the ground begin to vibrate. This telltale sign says there's something big and it's nearby.
That something big is the adult female T-Rex returning from her hunt. When she sees what's happened in her absence, all hell will break loose. A pair of adult Tyrannosaurus Rexes have gone on a hunt, leaving their two juveniles unattended. In their absence, a predatory Nanotyrannus has terrorized their offspring, killing one and threatening the other. But now, the ground begins to vibrate. The sound can be heard for miles. It's the adult female T-Rex coming back from her hunt.
She hears the very distinctive sound of her young pleading for help. It kicks in an emotion that's only found in female Tyrannosauruses. Mess with my baby, you're messing with hell.
Driven by her maternal instincts, the female is the first to arrive on the scene.
The female Tyrannosaurus knows instinctively this is a killer of juvenile Tyrannosaurus Rexes. She's got to leap into action. She doesn't have to worry about sizing up this opponent. She's 3 times bigger. She just needs to kill him.
The female T-Rex intends to distract Nanotyrannus from the lone surviving juvenile. Nano sees her giant jaws and sidesteps with his long legs.
The female has accomplished the most important thing. Get herself between her remaining juvenile and the killer of baby T-Rexes. Now the Nanotyrannus has 2 options. Try to finish off the remaining juvenile Tyrannosaurus Rex, or turn around and run. It decides to pit its speed and agility against the strength of a mad Tyrannosaurus Rex. He tries to flank her. If he can move around quickly enough, she cannot respond. He can go in and with his elongated snout, grab the juvenile, shake it in its mouth, and kill it and flee.
But Nanotyrannus underestimates his opponent. Fueled by raging levels of adrenaline, she spins and turns, avoiding his flanking move.
The last thing he sees are the open jaws of the female Tyrannosaurus Rex. She grabs the Nanotyrannus in her mouth, and using the bite force of 1,000 pounds per square inch, she crushes the back, crushes the ribs, and ends the life of this attacker.
But killing the Nano isn't enough for the mother T-Rex.
She wants to use him as a message to any other Nanotyrannus that comes into this area. Using her massive foot claws, she rips apart the body of the Nanotyrannus.
Having killed the attacker, she turns her attention to her lone surviving offspring. Nanotyrannus had no chance to win this fight. He lost because he made 2 fatal mistakes.
Number 1, it misjudged the maneuverability of an adult Tyrannosaurus Rex. Number 2, he failed to recognize that the bond between a mother and its offspring is stronger than any weapon it had.
A herd of Tyrannosaurus is on the move. Tons waves of rolling thunder, consuming everything in its path. Only this day, they've got some unwelcome company.
These dinosaurs have no idea they're being followed by some of the nastiest and most dangerous little dinosaurs that ever walked planet Earth.
The Raptors, the deadliest of all dinosaurs, are about to strike. Quick, intelligent, and cagey, they single out the weakest member of the herd.
They would stand off at a distance and look at the herd. They want to choose the most effective target. They're not just going to run in and try to attack the first dinosaur they find. It could be that that dinosaur is bigger than they are, or more importantly, it's completely healthy and can defend itself. Once they pick out their prey, they're going to attack. And the Thanatosaurus is going to be in dire trouble.
Their eyes lock onto their target. They begin to stir, slowly, deliberately, silent, except for the hissing of their breath.
What makes a raptor so incredibly dangerous is they're built like ninjas. They're fast, they're strong, they're agile, they've got razor-sharp teeth, and these teeth curve backwards. When you are bitten by an animal with teeth that point backwards, it's going to rip a chunk of flesh out of you. But they're up against a much bigger adversary, so they've got to work in unison. The Raptors rush in initially in hopes of startling the herd. If they can separate him, they have a better chance of taking him on.
Terrified and disoriented, the herd stampedes. Their immense legs make a deafening sound.
They do this for two reasons. Number one, they do it because they want to get away from the attacker. But the second reason why they do it is because when you run, it exposes the weakest guy, and that's the one the predators are going to focus on. Out of all the hiding places, the Raptors rush in. The pack works in unison, much like modern-day wolves do to bring down bigger prey. They burst out of their hiding places, and their job is to inflict as much injury as they can.
The Raptors seem to come from everywhere at once, at times leaping more than 10 feet in the air.
Deinonychus are incredibly fast, agile, and very swift predators. Thanatosaurus is a very heavy, slow, lumbering animal. There's a couple of key weaknesses in Thanatosaurus. Number one, it's his unprotected throat. There is no armor, and the throat is one of the places the Deinonychus are going to focus. Number two, it's his unguarded flanks. Thanatosaurus' side is like a huge billboard with a big bullseye on it that says, "Strike here." The Deinonychus are absolutely going to go for his unprotected flanks. If you can cut through the thick hide and expose the guts, that is what's going to debilitate that Thanatosaurus and take him out of the battle before it even begins.
Instinctively, Thanatosaurus fights back.
They're harmless, but they're not defenseless. They've got an exceptionally long tail. Their tail is almost the length of the rest of their body. Their tail is sort of designed like a baseball bat. Interconnecting rods connect each vertebra and give it a stiffened appearance. It's not wiggly like a crocodile's tail. This thing is a weapon.
One swing of the tail scatters the pack.
Although Deinonychus is a nasty dude, he's got some pretty wicked weapons, he still has a very light bird-like skeletal structure. A direct hit from a tail could end that guy's life. His hand claws and foot claws can be broken pretty easily in combat. So even though he's got these wicked weapons, he's still got to be cautious about how he uses them.
The other Raptors scramble to regroup. Then they strike again from every direction.
One of the favorite attack methods of the Raptors is what we call the slash and dash. Rush in, slash them with your hand claws, and hope that you inflict a series of injuries, and then you dash to safety. You allow your prey to slowly bleed to death. The problem is, Because of the thickness of Thanatosaurus's hide, that attack doesn't do much damage. That's like attacking a rhinoceros with a fork. At the end of the day, you've got a bent fork and a pissed-off rhinoceros.
The Raptors quickly up the ante. Deadly, swift menace with a singular goal. Kill.
They take the claws from their hands and dig them into that deep hide and hang on. Raising their foot, curling down their two toes, that brings their killing claws forward, and they begin to slice and cut the Thanatosaurus.
The Raptor strikes hard with its lethal killing claw. The Thanatosaurus launches an unexpected counterattack.
Once the Deinonychus land on his back, the Thanatosaurus is going to roll over, using his weight to crush them. It would be like being run over by a one-ton truck. The bones would snap and break like pencils.
Two Raptors now lie dead, while the wounded Thanatosaurus is still standing.
The Raptors are losing too many members of the pack. The Thanatosaurus is able to repel assault after assault. Slash and dash didn't work. This full confrontation is not working. 2,000 pounds of Thanatosaurus against a 150-pound Raptor is not an even fight, and he crushes them.
The Raptors are forced to retreat. A powerful storm is brewing. Night is falling.
They're not going to follow the Thanatosaurus because they don't want to keep him on high alert. They'll wait for nightfall and follow his blood trail. They'll know where he goes.
Weak and bleeding, the Thanatosaurus searches for cover. His only hope of getting out alive.
He realizes that by moving into the trees, it's going to be harder for the Deinonychus to have room to maneuver. He finds a grove of trees and moves in and hopes that nothing occurs overnight.
But to the Raptors, darkness is a trusted friend.
Now they'll switch over to their #1 most effective hunting method, night vision.
The stage is set. The final devastating showdown looms ahead. And in this battle, there can only be one outcome. Winner takes all. A pack of bloodthirsty raptors have targeted a 2,000-pound Thanatosaurus separated from the herd. To survive this life-or-death struggle, the hulking herbivore must rely on its sheer size. The raptors countered with stealth, speed, numbers, and yet one more advantage.
They've got excellent night vision. As the storm off in the distance moves closer, the Raptors realize they can use the sound of thunder to muffle their footsteps and the vibrations of their foot. They move in for the final assault.
With quick, erratic moves and the predatory intelligence of a giant bird of prey, the pack mounts its final ambush.
This spot is designed perfectly to play into the strengths of Deinonychus. There's a raised ridge behind the Thanatosaurus. It's the perfect launch site for an aerial, silent attack.
The environment also favors the raptors. Thanatosaurus is now at the mercy of his merciless attackers.
Under attack, Thanatosaurus has got to have his senses working at peak strength. Sight is going to be important because he's got to see where the attack is coming from. Sound is absolutely important as it becomes dark. You've got to hear where your attackers are. And the sense of smell is vitally important because it allows him to figure out where those raptors are out in that darkness.
Trapped in a thick grove of trees, Thanatosaurus is helpless. His immense weight and powerful tail useless. The raptors fly into action with white-hot intensity.
Now they're able to dig their claws deep into his side. Using their hand claws, they're holding on. But but it's the killing claw on their foot that helps them dig deep into the flesh. Once they begin to slice open, the internal organs of the Thanatosaurus will spill out onto the ground.
The assault intensifies. The Raptors are now in an all-out feeding frenzy.
As he fights for his life throughout this horrific assault, the Thanatosaurus still manages to kill 4 more members of the Raptor pack. But after an exhausting effort, this dinosaur finally loses consciousness and falls to the ground. The alpha male raptor grabs the prey by the throat and begins to crush its windpipe. The remaining raptors take advantage and begin to feed on the internal organs of the Thanatosaurus. Like a pack of wolves, these Deinonychus are fighting for the best parts.
The speed, intelligence, and cunning of the Raptors is too much for the lumbering beast.
With this banquet of Thanatosaurus guts laid out in front of him, the alpha male asserts his dominance and pushes away the rivals for the tastiest morsels.
Off in the distance, thunder continues to rumble. Then, all is quiet. The storm passes. Once again, silence descends over the great plain.
Thanatosaurus was bigger and certainly heavier. Thanatosaurus didn't necessarily make a mistake. It was numbers that took him down. One dinosaur, even as big as Thanatosaurus, cannot withstand an onslaught from a pack of raptors.
Raptor gang kills would continue. Forensic evidence as a guide, a potential scenario for what could have happened here was starting to come together. Driven by thirst, the Stegosaurus and its baby have moved out onto the lake bed to drink. Their compact feet slip easily through the hardened upper crust, and they become mired in mud. They are now an easy target. Attracted by the sounds of the struggling pair, a single Ceratosaurus arrives on the scene. Its long toes and splayed foot design allow it to move across the upper crust without breaking through. Its target, the juvenile.
The juvenile is basically helpless. It normally relies on its mother to be able to protect it. But she's stuck up to her shoulders in mud, so she can't use her main weapon, which is her spiked tail. Like its mother, the little juvenile has spikes, but he can't move them because he's literally exhausted from trying to get out of the mud.
The Ceratosaurus moves in for the kill. He bites the juvenile in one of its most vulnerable areas, behind the ribcage, directly in front of her hind legs. The mother looks on helplessly as the Ceratosaurus tears open a large gash in the juvenile's flank. Thrusting its head into the side of the juvenile, the Ceratosaurus is unaware of its surroundings, something that can be fatal on this killing field. The discovery of a trapped baby Stegosaurus is being eaten alive by the Ceratosaurus. The smell of fresh blood drifts downwind, perfectly in the path of a team of approaching Allosaurus.
These Allosaurus hunt in packs because it allows them to bring down much larger prey. They use their incredible sense of smell like a prehistoric homing device. Their keen sense of smell tells them that there's an adult and juvenile Stegosaurus about 100 yards ahead. But they also pick up the very distinct scent of a Ceratosaurus, and this is the hated enemy of Allosaurus.
One Allosaurus moves off to flank the unsuspecting Ceratosaurus. The remaining Allosaurus head towards the scene. The Ceratosaurus is outnumbered, and scientists now know it was also outsmarted.
it was sort of an earlier model meat eater. Doesn't have the more sophisticated brain that we see in some of its contemporaries, like Allosaurus. So, although it was pretty strong, it didn't have the claws, it didn't have the brains, and it also didn't have the size of some of the other giant meat eaters of its environment.
It's a face-off, one that's about to see a colossal monster join the fight. A single Ceratosaurus faces off against two Allosaurus. The prize? A helpless Stegosaurus and her young. From the top of the food chain, Allosaurus goes into killing mode.
If he's up against somebody bigger, Allosaurus is going to be cautious. He's going to stand back. He's going to really size up the prey, and he's going to focus on his adversary's weak points. If he's fighting somebody smaller, the battle changes. Now he's interested in rushing in and beating the crud out of his opponent. I don't care about weighing your strengths and weaknesses, brother. I'm bigger than you. I'll rip your head off.
50 million years ago, times were definitely tough. Having identified their adversary, the Allosaurus moved down the hill towards their intended target.
Allosaurus are cooperative hunters, so as two of them move down to take on their adversary head-on, the third moves off in a different direction in an effort to outflank the Ceratosaurus. We see this sort of ambush maneuver in modern lions and sometimes wolves. If you can keep your opponent's attention focused in one direction, it allows for a surprise attack from the other.
One of them takes advantage of the Stegosaurus' vulnerable position and uses him as a platform. The Ceratosaurus begins to move away from the Stegosaurus. With the force of a runaway freight train, the third Allosaurus crushes the unsuspecting Ceratosaurus. The collision is enough to kill it on impact. But with the attention now focused on the downed Ceratosaurus, one of them leaves himself open to counterattack.
The massive weight on the female Stegosaurus causes her body to lean forward. This frees her tail. The moment she feels her tails become free, she swings it with every bit of remaining energy she has, and it lands a direct hit.
Bodies begin to pile up. One Allosaurus is down. A few steps away, the body of the Ceratosaurus lays motionless. A Stegosaurus struggles to free herself from the jaws of this relentless playing tube. Next to her, the lifeless body of her offspring. Suddenly, a sound cuts through the air.
A family of Camarasaurus moves down to the lake bed. Leading them is a huge male. Its sheer size is enough to deter almost any attacker. The Allosaurus are now faced with a difficult choice. Do they continue their attack on the Stegosaurus, or do they dare take on something as huge as a Camarasaurus?
A herd of Camarasaurus approaches a drying lake. From their tall vantage point, they can see the carnage brought about by drought. With their keen sense of smell, they pick up the scent of an unusually high number of predators.
Their sheer size and mass is usually enough to deter any predator from attacking. But the large number of predators assembled in this one area puts the Camarasaurus on high alert.
Despite the threat, quenching their thirst is a priority. The alpha male steps onto the mud-encrusted shore. As he positions himself to get a drink, he finds it difficult to maneuver.
This puts the dinosaur in a very precarious position if it happens to get attacked. Unfortunately for this sauropod, it's unaware of the mud trap that lies just beneath the cracked and dry upper crust.
The enormous weight of this Jurassic Titan cracks through the dried mud layer. Its elephant-like front feet become stuck. Each time it tries to pull its legs free, it ends up sinking even further. The stuck Camarasaurus begins to panic and bellows a distress call. Realizing that they have an opportunity, the Allosaurus pick up the pace.
The Allosaurus make a very wise decision to abandon the Stegosaurus and go for the Camarasaurus. That Stegosaurus just freed her tail and killed her. They know now she can defend herself, so the sounds of the Camarasaurus makes it much more interesting of a target. So they move off and decide that's the thing they're going to attack, because if they can kill it, it'll keep them fed for 3 or 4 days.
At the sight of the Allosaurus, the Camarasaurus herd turns and retreats, leaving its leader to face the threat alone.
Camarasaurus are herding dinosaurs. Their number one priority is to make sure that the babies make it into the next generation. When 2 Allosauruses showed up, their priority is to move away from the danger and take their babies. Unfortunately, that leaves their leader abandoned and stuck in the mud.
The Allosaurs approach carefully, circling to make sure that the Camarasaurus is firmly stuck in the mud. Working in tandem, they look for the best angle to attack a weak spot, the flanks or neck. A deep gouge or bite in those strategic areas, and the herbivore goes down.
Under normal conditions, there is no way these 2 Allosaurus would dare take on a bull Camarasaurus. But the fact that it's stuck in the mud has changed the whole battle plan. They'll attack him as long as they can reach one of his vulnerable areas.
Taking up positions on either side of the giant sauropod, the Allosaurs launch their attack, teeth and claws primed to bite and slash.
The Allosaurus leap onto the side of the sauropod. They're trying to cut through the thick flesh. If they can rip open its side, the lifeblood of that sauropod is going to spill out on the ground, and that's going to end the battle quickly with no harm to the Allosaurus.
The Camarasaurus strains from the weight of his attackers, but in a defensive move, shakes them off. But not before the Allosaurus, using their large hand claws, inflict deep wounds in his flanks. But under the intense heat of the Jurassic sun, an unseen force begins to take its toll on the Allosaurus. Overheating.
The massive size of these Allosaurus makes overheating a real concern. Almost all evidence points to these dinosaurs as being warm-blooded creatures, which means they have no trouble warming up. But cooling down can be a real chore. And after their fight with that Ceratosaurus, their bodies were already in high gear. And now with this new assault on Camarasaurus, their temperature gauges are in the red.
Recognizing that their prey cannot go anywhere, the Allosaurs shut down momentarily.
Like modern birds and dogs, the Allosauruses pant in an effort to expel excess body heat. But they also have a special adaptation that allows the heat to escape through their skull. It's a large opening called the antorbital fenestra. It's located directly in front of the eye socket. Most people looking at the skull think that that's the actual eye. With only a thin layer of skin covering it, it's ideal for allowing excess heat to escape.
With their body temperatures back to normal, the Allosaurs are ready to fight. It's 2 predators versus Camarasaurus on an ancient lake bed. All hell is about to break loose. During a drought in the late Jurassic, a receding lake has become a battlefield. 3 Allosaurus have killed a Ceratosaurus. A Stegosaurus, wielding his lethal tail spikes, has killed one of the unsuspecting Allosaurus. The fight shifts as the surviving Allosaurs focus their attention on a Camarasaurus stuck in the mud. Using their 2 key weapons, sharp teeth and vicious claws, they inflict serious wounds. If they can make the kill, the predators can feast for days. The Camarasaurus, despite being at a clear disadvantage, wages a strong self-defense. The Allosaurus stalk their prey, looking for a weak spot.
If one of the Allosauruses can get to the soft skin of the neck, they might be able to sever a major artery or cut off the air to the lungs. That will absolutely end this battle and bring down their behemoth prey.
The Allosaurus circle their prey. They use an anatomical adaptation to their advantage: splayed toes.
The Allosauruses don't get stuck in the mud like the Camarasaurus for two reasons. Number one, they don't weigh as much. And number two, they have a remarkable adaptation. It's the design of their foot. Like modern birds, their toes are splayed out in 3 different directions. This configuration gives them incredible traction when they're running at high speeds, but it also gives them stability. And the weight of the body is distributed between these 3 toes and not straight down, as in the foot of Camarasaurus. They work like snowshoes, keeping the body from breaking through the upper hard crust while allowing them unimpeded movement across the lake bed.
One of the Allosaurus attacks. The Camarasaurus is quick to respond.
Like a freight train, the impact crushes the ribs and splinters the arms of Allosaurus and drives its own humerus deep into its chest.
The momentum of the tail allows the Camarasaurus's front legs to become free. Using the power in its rear legs, it raises its body. The other Allosaurus darts in.
The Allosaurus can't stop. Its momentum literally drives it directly under the foot of the massive sauropod.
With its massive weight, the Camarasaurus crushes its last remaining rival. But its victory would be short-lived. With all of its energy spent, and once again firmly stuck in the mud, the Camarasaurus is condemned to a slow, agonizing death.
The Allosaurus was so focused on the fact that Camarasaurus was stuck, it wasn't in top predator mode. That meant it got in too close. Never in its wildest imagination would have thought that that Camarasaurus would shift its center of gravity, free those giant front feet, and crush that Allosaurus like it was bone.
Camarasaurus may have triumphed over Allosaurus in this fight, the dark Pacific waters north of Japan. A giant megalodon slices through the deep. A super predator on the hunt. His bulk so massive, the search for food never ends.
This is a shark that was so enormous it could swallow a modern great white shark whole.
Suddenly, his senses pick up a disturbance in the water. He locks onto a lone sperm whale, separated from his pod.
The shark has a remarkable battery of senses. It can actually feel the whale moving through the water. Receptors in its nose allows it to pick up these tiny electrical impulses that are put off every time the whale moves a muscle. The Meg is able to size up its prey before it even sees it.
The megalodon's skin was covered with tiny taste buds called denticles. These allowed it to taste through its skin, which helped it more easily find and identify its prey.
The coloration of Megalodon was ideal for his hunting methods. His skin was darker on the top and lighter on the bottom. What this meant is if you were above the Megalodon looking down, you couldn't really see him. And if you were beneath the Megalodon looking up, you wouldn't be able to see him. His favorite hunting tactic is to come from below and behind his potential prey.
As the Meg closes in on the whale, he descends in order to surprise him from below. When he's just below the pack, he changes direction and picks up speed as he turns upward.
The jaws of a Megalodon are very similar to the jaws of a great white. There were row upon row of teeth. The teeth located in the very front part were designed for grabbing the prey. The teeth behind were much more sharp and therefore were better designed for slicing.
With sudden fury, Megalodon strikes.
When it opens its mouth, the jaws literally come out of the mouth, and those serrated teeth, both up and down, would have acted like a giant meat slicer.
Rolling its eyes backwards and closing a protective covering over them allows Megalodon to move in close without risking eye injury.
Modern sharks have a remarkable way of protecting their eyes during an attack, and Megalodon would have had the same system. When Megalodon moves into bite, it will roll its eyes backwards, and a protective membrane moves forward and protects the eye. But with its other senses in high gear, sight really isn't necessary once it targets its prey.
Experts have discovered broken Megalodon teeth embedded in hundreds of whale bones found all over the world, attesting to the fearlessness of this vicious hunter.
He targets the tail because that's the whale's only means of locomotion. That part of the body is very thin, and he bites deep into the vertebrae. But like modern sharks, his teeth are designed to break off and be replaced throughout his entire lifetime. Losing one tooth is no big deal when you have 300 more in your mouth that can replace it.
This is no great loss for the Megalodon, who makes sure to only sacrifice its dullest teeth in battle.
The whale's tail is nearly ripped off. It's not going to be useful in moving his body.
The Brigmophyseter uses its flipper to steer. It is literally rudderless without it.
There are 44 teeth in its jaws. The front teeth are as long as those of a Tyrannosaurus Rex.
The Brigmophyseter sends a sonar signal for help. A blast of sound similar in range to a World War II submarine.
He lowers his head and begins to send a signal of thumping noises down into the depths. It's basically a cry for help.
Like the active sonar used by submarines, the whale emits sound waves that bounce back when hitting a solid object. This sets coordinates for both sender and receiver. The advanced mammalian brain of the Brigmophyseter enables it to listen for a distress call while still engaged in hunting.
These guys are actively hunting and seeking prey. This guy's designed to battle giant squid in the deepest parts of the ocean. He can handle his own.
Super sensitive organs in the skull and jaw read the vibrations, creating a sound map. Instantly, the pack's leader, the bull whale, uses its clicking vocal noises to tell the rest of the pod to mount a rescue mission.
The sperm whale is one of the few predatory whales. He's not a lovable whale when we think of whales. This guy's got a massive set of teeth and a pretty powerful set of jaws.
Several hundred feet above, the great shark senses a sudden change in the sea's rhythm. Subtle at first, yet unmistakable.
The sensors in his nose pick up vibrations. He begins to feel a thud vibration. He can't figure out what it is. But the vibrations and thuds become much stronger.
The Brigmophyseter uses its sonar to assess the situation. It knew that its pod member was in trouble. Now it knows why. Like the great whites of today, the Megalodon charges to inflict fatal harm all at once, minimizing the chances of being injured in a long struggle. Lurking in the shadows, Meg now waits for his prey to slowly bleed to death. But his keen senses begin to pick up trouble. He's suddenly hit with an enormous battering ram.
The sperm whale hits him dead in the center of his body, throwing the Megalodon's enormous weight in a tumble motion under the ocean.
The Megalodon's relatively primitive brain is too slow to react to the new threat.
Before he can recover, a second sperm whale has come from the depth, and using that enormous head, rammed him like a freight train.
The Brigmophyseters make quick strikes with their battering ram heads in hopes of driving the Megalodon away and avoiding a more savage close-range battle.
knows there's no way he can take on a pod of angry sperm whales. He's got to get out of there as quickly as he can.
Megalodon does not need air and goes deeper where its attacker cannot follow.
The sperm whales begin to circle looking for this megalodon. They want to absolutely take out their vengeance on the animal that injured their family member.
The Brigmophyseter uses its sonar to try to track a fleeing shark. The water's darkness isn't a problem, but hitting a moving target is a challenge.
The whales normally use their sonar to find prey in the darkest parts of the ocean. But like modern killer whales and dolphins, they also use that sonar as a weapon. They narrow the beam and they can actually stun and in some cases kill smaller prey. Well, biting sperm whales could narrow that beam and direct it at the shark, and that would absolutely interfere with all of its sensory organs.
Sound travels 4.5 times faster in water than on land. The Brigmophyseter is in luck. It hits the Megalodon, and the sudden piercing blast packs the force of a tidal wave. The Megalodon is once again the victim of its less advanced brain. It's stunned by the sonar strike and unable to react.
The sperm whales now deploy their most deadly weapon, T-Rex-sized teeth. Individually, these whales are only a bother to something as large as a megalodon. But attacking in a pack, these whales act like overgrown piranhas, and they will tear the shark to pieces.
The clever Brigmophyseter determines that the danger has passed and returns to tend to its mate.
The sperm whales then gather around the injured whale to try to lend their support. They'll actually put their head underneath the sperm whale and try to lift him up to catch air.
The Brigmophyseter is going into shock. As with all mammals, this is a dire situation.
An injured sperm whale will never recover from such an enormous bite. He's going to slowly die.
The Brigmophyseter sings a sad death song to its mates. The Megalodon hears it too.
Megalodon has never left. He's just moved off in the distance. His sense of smell is so incredible, he's able to track this dying sperm whale 3 miles away. By the time the sperm whale has died, his remaining family members have moved on, and the Megalodon will move in to begin to feast on the carcass. The mistake the whale made was not diving deep with its family. Even though it's a whale and they're huge, Megalodon is a whale killer. It failed to stay within the safety of the family, and it paid the ultimate price.
Megalodon has triumphed. When scientists find Allosaurus bones, they almost always show signs of breaks, bites, and other injuries, which indicates that they were frequent fighters. Ceratosaurus bones are usually found unmarked. For them, conflict was a last resort. The Ceratosaurus was a cautious dinosaur, with eyes placed closer to the sides of its head to widen its field of vision and help it spot potential trouble. Perhaps they would only venture into dangerous territory when driven by terrible hunger.
Dinosaurs like Allosaurus and Tyrannosaurus rex would have marked the boundaries of their territory with scent marks like modern predators do. These scent marks were a clear warning to intruders that they were not welcome.
With its eyes placed more to the side, the Ceratosaurus had poor depth perception when looking straight ahead. It was best able to see prey in front of it when standing still to stabilize its vision.
One of the favorite hunting methods of Ceratosaurus is the hide-and-seek method. She'll hide in a dense grove of trees along a game trail, standing motionless. Only thing moving on her are going to be her eyes. She doesn't want to give away her position.
While the female's in hiding, her mate moves to circle behind their potential prey. He will then try to flush their quarry and chase it towards the hiding female.
We see the same sort of behavior in modern lions, where the male will simply act as a distraction to drive prey towards the awaiting female. It's a great way to ambush prey while limiting the potential harm to the Ceratosaurus. And they know that the prey is going to take the easiest route of escape, and that's going to be on that game trail.
Once the male knows that the prey has gotten on the game trail, the chase ensues. The Ceratosaurus is trying to make as much noise as he can. He's trying to drive the prey into the waiting arms of his hidden mate.
The male Ceratosaurus will use a loud roar to drive the prey and alert his hiding mate.
She has no idea that while she's laying an ambush for this prey, she herself is being preyed upon. A 35-foot-long, 4-ton Allosaurus is within striking distance. He slowly begins to move up behind her, trying to be as quiet as he can.
The Allosaurus's feet are heavily padded with rubbery, calloused skin. This allows even the 4-ton Allosaurus to sneak up on its victim.
The foot of Allosaurus is perfectly designed to muffle the sound of its approach if it needed to be quiet.
It also allows it to grip the ground more firmly, preventing missteps which would alert its quarry.
The female senses something is behind her, but it's too late.
The Allosaurus exerts 1 ton of pressure with its bite, a lethal force.
All she sees is the wide open mouth of the Allosaurus, who crushes her by the neck, snapping the bones as if they were twigs. Her neck is broken, she's completely lifeless, and slumps to the ground.
The Ceratosaurus may ultimately have been doomed by its limited brain capacity. Only able to concentrate on one thing at a time, it is too slow to recognize the danger.
Now the Allosaurus can turn his attention to the male, who is rushing in, thinking the female will jump out at any moment. He knows where the ambush spot is. He stops because he doesn't see her.
The Allosaurus bellows loudly at the male Ceratosaurus, likely louder than the roar of a jumbo jet taking off. This deafening sound is meant to warn off adversaries.
He senses something's wrong, but has no idea what. He catches slight movement. As he turns and looks, he sees the silhouette of a massive Allosaurus that is now closing in.
The Allosaurus is a classic headhunter. Its claws can be used to hold prey, but its teeth are its main weapon.
The Allosaurus's jaws snap shut within inches of the Ceratosaurus, but he's safe. The Allosaurus turns his body and the Ceratosaurus lines up to try to figure out where the mate is. The male can only assume she's run off, or worse, the Allosaurus has killed her.
Like many bird species, the Ceratosaurus probably mated for life, but now he can concentrate only on survival.
He knows that in this dense forest, he can maneuver a lot quicker. Using trees as defense, he ducks in and out, trying to get in close enough to attack the Allosaurus. The Allosaurus stands its ground and simply leans that monstrous body forward, snapping that mouth every time the Ceratosaurus steps from behind the tree. Ceratosaurus looks at his attacker and recognizes the 2 most vulnerable spots. He realizes that if he can outflank the Allosaurus and jump on its side, the Allosaurus has no defense. He'll be able to leap onto his side and rip him open. His long, stiffened tail is designed like a balancing pole. He can leap onto the side of that Allosaurus and use that tail to balance while he's up there. It would be like the world's first rodeo rider, only this rodeo ends in death.
Judging by its size and skeleton, the Ceratosaurus would have been able to jump almost 20 feet in the air. He may be able to surprise the Allosaurus, who is thought to have a vertical leap of just over 10 feet. It is the Ceratosaurus's only hope. The Allosaurus has a lower jaw that is able to expand outward when he bites, so that he can swallow giant prey. And his size allows him to chase the biggest game. He is not used to fighting smaller, more agile opponents.
Allosaurus is so big, all he cares about is getting his teeth on you. Once he's got you, you're done. Game over. The claw drives home directly into the Allosaurus. The Allosaurus roars in terror as it stands upright, blood gushing from the wound. Now the fight has changed. It's personal. The Ceratosaurus now has the perfect opportunity to outflank the Allosaurus. Ceratosaurus moves quickly around and leaps into the air, landing on the side of the Allosaurus. The Allosaurus is looking to kill this animal, not chase him away, but to kill him. Allosaurus, using his mass, is able to shift and shudder and ultimately throw the Ceratosaurus to the ground. The Allosaurus lunges forward, but then changes position halfway to his target. The Ceratosaurus fails to react quickly enough. The enormous jaws of the Allosaurus clamp down on the shoulder of the Ceratosaurus. The Ceratosaur roars in pain and is able to use its elongated upper teeth to slash the jaw of the Allosaur. The Allosaur will not release its prey.
The Allosaurus will not just bite straight down. He will also move his jaws side to side to cause slashing wounds.
Grabbing the Ceratosaurus in his jaws, the Allosaurus picks his body up and shakes it like a rag doll. The Ceratosaurus slumps to the ground, and the Allosaurus towers over its prey. Allosaurus uses the enormous claws on its feet to disembowel its helpless prey. Allosaurus has won the battle and has reclaimed this forest as its own.
This dry, desolate riverbed is the casualty of a major drought. A lone Gastonia walks with his head hovering above the ground. He's trying to sniff out water for survival. His vision is poor, so his entourage of pterosaurs acts as lookouts for predators.
His incredible sense of smell tells him there's water just underneath the soil. Using his front legs, the little Gastonia begins to dig. It won't take much to get to the water below. On full alert are his lookouts, the small pterosaurs.
Gastonia finds a promising spot and begins digging. If he can smell water, it can't be more than a foot deep. But Utah Raptor is searching for sustenance too.
Utah Raptor has been using the riverbed to hunt for dead and dying animals. He's been relegated to scavenging. There's not a lot of living things. This Utah Raptor has got to find food. Dead prey is fine, but the nutritional value of something that's died is much less than the nutritional value of fresh meat. This animal is a machine. You've got to keep the machine fueled. He's got to find fresh kill. His sense of smell is just as acute as Gastonia's.
Utah Raptor prefers to ambush his prey. Chasing and fighting for his meals uses up precious energy. It also risks injury. The drought has driven him out of his favorite hunting grounds, but he will still try to use surprise as a weapon whenever he can.
If he can come in quiet enough, he can reach underneath and rip the insides of the Gastonia open. But the Gastonia's lookouts are on full alert. They spot the Raptor long before the Raptor has a chance to run in.
The pterosaurs can see every bit as well as the Raptor, making them a potent alarm system.
His poor eyesight doesn't spot the Utah Raptor, but a sense of smell does. He's able to smell the direction the Utah Raptor is coming from. So he turns broadside to his attacker.
Gastonia has no claws on his feet, and his teeth are blunt. His only weapon is his massive tail scissors.
The little Gastonia begins to swish his tail from side to side. The spikes that stick out from the side are very similar to the teeth on a chainsaw. If that Utah Raptor gets too close, he could have a nasty, nasty surprise.
Utah Raptor will usually grasp its prey with its arms and use its heavy-duty leg claws to slash at its victim. But his claws will not penetrate armor as thick as the Gastonia's. With food scarce, both dinosaurs must also conserve energy. The slow-moving Gastonia could go a week without eating. A faster raptor has a higher metabolism. He would have a hard time going more than 3 days. This is the disadvantage of great size. It requires a great deal of food for fuel.
As the Utah Raptor closes in, the Gastonia is going to mirror every move. No matter which direction he comes from, the little Gastonia is going to shift sideways, making sure that his flanks are protected.
The normally agile Utah Raptor is handicapped on the sandy surface of the dry creek bed. His long clawed feet are better designed for hard surfaces. He's used to the forest, where the earth is packed hard, and the trees provide cover. The Gastonia's rounded feet give him more stability maneuvering on the soft sand.
When you pit Gastonia against Utah Raptor, Utah Raptor is much taller, but that's of no value when the little guy you're attacking has pincushions sticking out of his back. You're not going to jump on his back. Height has no advantage in fighting a foe like Gastonia. In fact, it's a disadvantage. You want to get lower than it can squat so you can get up underneath it to launch an attack. Utah Raptor knows there's a couple of places on Gastonia's body that are not protected. The underside of its legs, its underbelly, and even underneath the base of the tail. Those are the areas that he's going to focus on when he tries to launch his attack.
The Utah Raptor can jump an astounding 15 feet in the air.
The Utah Raptor, landing on the other side of Gastonia, quickly whirls around, reaches down with his claw, and inflicts a very deep cut into the side of the little Gastonia. The Gastonia roars in pain and tries to maneuver his tail back into position, but the Utah Raptor has leaped aside. The Utah Raptor recognizes that if it can only inflict a couple of more injuries, the little Gastonia will slowly bleed to death.
The Gastonia isn't smart enough to form strategy.
The little Gastonia's brain is not very large, but at least it's big enough to know to learn quickly how to defend itself against this new form of attack. The Utah Raptor jumps his body once again, but little Gastonia is ready. This time he swings his flanks towards the Utah Raptor. The Utah Raptor spins to attack, and he steps directly into the very spot that the Gastonia's tail and armor comes together.
Gastonia's prehistoric scissors would be powerful enough to cut a wooden baseball bat with ease. The Gastonia's limited brain focuses on only one thing at a time. Now it's water. Utah Raptor has terrific vision, sharper than any humans. The Utah Raptor is as smart as a falcon or an eagle. It doesn't just react to its environment. It can plan ahead. And now it forms a bold new plan of attack. The Utah Raptor can use his quickness to scare and confuse his prey. He will run directly at it, limiting the time it has to react.
The Utah Raptor recognizes the soft, unprotected skin on the front leg. Leaning down, he grabs the skin and pulls back. As he rips back, he rips an enormous chunk of flesh from the underside of the arm.
When the raptor loses teeth, it will regrow them like a shark.
The Gastonia has been injured. His front leg is in terrible pain. He can't apply a lot of weight to it. He's got to try to turn that little body now on only 3 legs.
Instinct tells the Gastonia to lean his armored body sideways to protect where the raptor attacked.
This is the moment the Utah Raptor is waiting for. This is his opportunity. He's inflicted the injury. If he can just do it a couple more times, it's goodbye to the Gastonia and game over.
Even as large a dinosaur as the Gastonia would die of blood loss in 3 or 4 hours.
The Utah Raptor knows that if he can inflict the same injury on the back leg as he did on the front, the Gastonia is done. But by moving to the back leg, it's the exact position the Gastonia hoped he would move to. He's near the most dangerous anti-raptor weapon ever made, the giant pair of prehistoric scissors.
If the Gastonia can catch the raptor in his giant pair of tail scissors, he can break a bone and disable him. Even the raptor's 3-inch round leg bone would snap like a twig.
Utah Raptor is much taller and certainly more agile than Gastonia. If Gastonia is going to win this battle, there's one spot on a Utah Raptor that a Gastonia can attack. That's his legs. If he can maneuver Utah Raptor towards the base of his tail, he'll have him exactly where he wants him.
Gastonia pulls his legs up underneath his body to protect his underside. His tail is heavily armored, but its powerful muscles are able to move it with surprising speed. This is its only chance.
The Utah Raptor has moved into the perfect position for the Gastonia. The moment that Raptor takes one more step back, he'll be able to deploy his anti-Raptor scissors.
Gastonia's brain is slow, but its reflexes are quick.
The tail of the Gastonia is slung forward, and these giant scissors come together and slice through the meat of the leg of this massive Utah Raptor.
The shearing action is like a hedge clipper, with one blade moving over the other.
The Utah Raptor tries to regain his footing, but the little Gastonia isn't done. He swings his tail from side to side like some medieval chainsaw. These sharp spikes slice through the soft skin of the Utah Raptor. He rolls to get away from this deadly attack. Gastonia has won the battle.
Once Gastonia believes that the Utah Raptor is unable to continue the fight, he again returns to the business at hand, searching for water.
The brain of a dinosaur is like a series of light switches. One is on and everything else is off. They think about hunting, survival, reproduction, food. The moment the little Gastonia no longer sees the Utah Raptor as a threat, he completely disregards him and goes back to his search for water.
But the evidence found near Moab soaring temperatures top 90 degrees on the plains. Extinction is enveloping Earth. Few large plant eaters are left.
We're coming to the end of the Pleistocene, the end of the Ice Age. The environments are changing and animals are pretty stressed. The lion is having a difficult time finding enough food to keep him alive. He's been very lucky that a bison wandered in close enough for him to attack, and he made a kill. Vital for the lion because the lion's literally at the end of his rope.
The lion is primarily an ambush hunter. Its great size would seem to make it hard to hide, but it is perfectly suited for its environment. Its coloring matches the brush. It moves silently on padded feet and is able to remain completely motionless for hours. When it strikes, it is lightning quick. The mega bear would smell its prey first. Then, once he had it in sight, he would wait for it to enter striking distance.
The bear's taking advantage of the wind. He's coming from downwind. The lion doesn't pick up his scent. He has no idea he's being stalked. The bear is moving up slowly using trees to help break up his silhouette.
The bear moves in short bursts of speed. He was not built for long sprints in the heat. Shorter, controlled bursts also allow him to assess the situation to make sure he's not headed into an ambush. His first option is to scare a rival predator away and take its prey.
The lion has to have this meal. His life depends on it. The bear comes bursting out of a grove of trees, roaring at the top of his lungs at a full gallop faster than a modern horse. The lion turns to face this attack. The bear expects the lion to run, but the lion doesn't. The lion stands his ground.
Bears in our own time are designed to hibernate. In the Ice Age, there were no seasonal weather changes. The mega bear ate the same amount year-round, giving it an insatiable need to hunt.
He towers over the lion. This bear is nearly 11.5 feet tall. He's a massive, massive animal, and he's very intimidating. The lion, normally, this would be enough for him to turn tail and run. But he can't. He cannot afford to leave this prey.
The end of the Ice Age set off a major movement of species. Cold weather animals moved north, while smaller, swifter animals that were more difficult to hunt replaced them. When the bear faced another predator, he spread his arms wide to look as intimidating as possible. But this exposed his only weakness, his unprotected stomach.
The lion was unable to take advantage of that soft underbelly, and all he can do is clamp those huge jaws on the back of the bear. But the bear's body mass is so thick, and that fat layer so immense, it doesn't do a lot of damage. It hurts, but it certainly doesn't do a lot of damage to the bear. The bear is able to shake the lion off and regain his footing.
He has a thick layer of fat to combat the cold that also makes him harder to hold on to.
The lion takes the next step and makes a mock charge, hoping that the bear will stand again on his hind legs, because the lion intent is to go in this time and try to grab the bear by the underbelly. But the bear doesn't stand up. The bear simply rears back and begins to shift his center of gravity to launch his own attack. This time the bear comes full and he doesn't stop.
When it mounts a bear rush, the mega bear moves at top speed. But it remains fully balanced, using the 8-inch claws on its feet to dig into the ground and provide traction. It is perfectly poised to use its claws with extreme dexterity.
He can swing those paws like a professional baseball player can swing a bat. And when he hits you, he's going to hit you with an incredible amount of force. It's not just the claws, it's the sheer force of the swing that's going to cause the damage.
The mega lion's skull is much thicker than the modern lion. It could absorb a blow from a shovel to the head and quickly recover. Its strategy when facing a fellow predator was to circle until it could find where it was vulnerable. Once it identified its target, it would lunge and fake to maneuver its opponent into exposing its weak spot.
The lion comes forward with a couple of mock charges, and the bear has a tendency to want to stand on those hind legs, and that's what the lion wants. But the bear doesn't stand up all the way, and that makes the lion's attack useless. The bear continues to do his mock charges in hopes that if that lion will just turn to run, the bear will be able to bypass those weapons, those teeth, and those claws.
With the temperature rising, the mega lion would ultimately be replaced by the much smaller cougar and leopard. It simply took too much energy for the mega lion to feed itself in the greater heat.
He's running out of energy and knows that it's now or never. He lunges forward, arms out in front of him, and attacks the face of the bear. This move brings the mega lion directly into the range of its powerful teeth and jaws, and the short-faced bear uses them to his full advantage.
The mega bear will actually use wrestling moves in a fight, including trying to pin an opponent. This will render it harmless with the lowest risk of injury.
He grabs the mega lion by the midsection, crunches down, cracking and breaking ribs, and then rips back. The mega lion roars in pain and then slumps to the ground. Figuring that the lion is unable to continue the fight, the short-faced bear turns his attention to the bison and begins to feed.
Both of these mammals needed huge amounts of food to survive. A mega bear could consume up to 30 pounds of meat at a time. But would this meal be his last? The Ice Age has come to an end, and global warming has thrown the ecosystem of North America into utter chaos. Animals were forced to adapt, migrate, or die. Mass migration brought new diseases that indigenous creatures had no resistance to. With the food supply dwindling, even dominant predators could find themselves fighting for prey. Bison were one of the few herbivores that actually thrived in the warmer temperatures. The grasslands expanded in the heat, offering them a larger food supply.
The bear's attention is clearly on the bison. Its mind is no longer focused on the fight. Although the lion is down, he's certainly not out.
The mega lion is most comfortable hunting at night. Like all cats, his large eyes gave him superior night vision. But that does not help him now.
The only hope the lion has is to crush the windpipe of the bear. If it can bite with enough force to penetrate that thick hide of the bear, he'll succeed in winning the day.
The lion's long tail gives him added agility.
Before the lion can reach the bear's throat, the bear is able to hold off the attacker with its arms. The lion tries in vain to grab the throat, but the bear is just too powerful.
The Ice Age favored power over speed. Larger animals were better insulated.
The lion is in excruciating pain from the force of the bear's throat, but he won't give up. Because of the lack of available food, his survival instincts won't allow him to turn tail and run, even though it seems like he's fighting a losing battle. He turns to face the bear and bellows a huge roar to send a clear message: this fight is to the death.
The bear's roar would seem as loud as an oncoming train.
The lion scores a direct hit to the face of the bear. Temporarily blinded and disoriented, the bear loses its footing and crashes to the ground. This gives the lion the opening that it's been waiting for.
The lion's senses are keen, even its whiskers, which could pick up vibrations. It can sense animals as small as a mouse in pitch darkness.
The lion is desperate, and the only way it can win is to get to the throat. With the last remaining strength, he lunges towards the bear. The force of the impact knocks the bear backwards, and the lion grabs the throat.
The lion needed almost 40 pounds of meat a day to survive. Without it, the mega lion would quickly weaken.
The bear is able to regain his footing and towers over its rider. It throws the 750-pound mega lion with little effort. Unfortunately for the lion, the bear happens to throw it in the direction of the cave.
The cave is over 85 feet deep. A deadly drop.
It's a sheer drop to the bottom that nothing can survive. The herbivore bones that were found in the cave show no signs of predation, so this tells us that nothing that went into that cave lived to eat the bodies of the other victims.
70 million years ago, Albertosaurus was the most fearsome hunter in North America. It was one of the few dinosaurs who would take on the horned Arctic dinosaur. Pachyrhinosaurus had eaten many days' worth of food to prepare for their migration. This would have slowed them down and made them sluggish.
Although Pachyrhinosaurus doesn't have the same massive size and weaponry as the other members of the ceratopsian family, they're still pretty powerful and dangerous dinosaurs. That horn can cause some fatal wounds, and the fact that they lived in herds makes them that much more dangerous. So these Albertosaurus have got to be very careful.
Albertosaurus fed on horned dinosaurs, duck-billed dinosaurs, and even the armored Ankylosaurus. They were fearless.
The behavior and hunting methods of dinosaurs like Albertosaurus were no different than those of larger predators today. Lions are a perfect example of how they'll seek out members of the herd and target the weakest for attack. These Albertosaurus know that a weak member of the herd is less likely to put up a vigorous defense, and so their chances of being injured are reduced.
Unlike many dinosaurs, the Albertosaurus wanted to chase its prey. This tired the victim and made it easier to kill.
Alerted to their presence, the Pachyrhinosaurus take up a defensive stand and begin to scan the forest for their unseen attacker. Realizing that the herd is aware of them, the Albertosaurus leave their hiding positions and move in toward the waiting Pachyrhinosaurus.
Pachyrhinosaurus had eyes on the side of its head. Its depth perception was poor.
If they can cause the herd to stampede, they know it'll expose the weakest member. Even though these dinosaurs could stand their ground against these Albertosaurus, the Pachyrhinosaurus are hardwired to flee at the first signs of danger. By turning and running away, it exposes the weakest member. It ensures the health and well-being of the rest of the herd. This is nature's way of weeding out the sick, old, and injured.
With the breaking up of the continents, the oceans moved closer to what is now North America, causing a dramatic increase in rain.
The herd is forced to the edge of the river, but they're unable to cross, so they have to make a stand. They lower their head and thrust their nasal horns towards the predator. The Albertosaurus pace back and forth, probing for any weakness in their defense. As they circle, they take turns making mock charges in the hopes of panicking the group. They get their chance, and one of the herd members breaks ranks and runs.
The Pachyrhinosaurus herds were made up of a few dominant males and a harem of females and their children.
Albertosaurus live on instinct. The moment that Pachy breaks ranks and runs for it, the predators zero in on him and give chase. The Albertosaurus knows that separated from the herd, this Pachyrhinosaurus does not stand a chance of defending himself. It's the old adage, divide and conquer.
The Pachyrhinosaurus frill was almost 3 inches thick and made of solid bone.
As he turns, the jaws of the Albertosaurus snap closed on the side of his frill and broken teeth fly into the air. The Pachy lowers his head and hopes to ram the Albertosaurus with his long nose.
The Pachyrhinosaurus could grow back its horn if it broke.
One of the weaknesses of Albertosaurus is that it's relatively lightly built. Now, looking at their size, that may seem hard to believe, but when you look at their skeletal design, you'll see that their bones are hollow. These hollow bones are rigid and strong, but they're very, very light. So if the Pachy gets lucky and hits a bone, it could break it without really any problem. And this would not only take the Albertosaurus out of the fight, it could very well end its life.
The Pachyrhinosaurus had a low center of gravity. This allowed it to pivot quickly to keep its horn and protective frill facing an attacker.
Pachyrhinosaurus, like pretty much all members of the ceratopsian family, have no weaponry from behind their neck backwards. From their neck back, they're completely vulnerable and they have no weapons. They have no spikes. They have nothing. all of their weapons are in the front. So to attack an animal like Pachyrhinosaurus, your best bet would be to attack its unprotected side, or its flanks, or even the back of the neck behind the shield.
The skin of the Pachyrhinosaurus was up to 3 inches thick and similar in toughness to an elephant or rhino.
Once the Pachyrhinosaurus is knocked to the ground, he's basically helpless. All the Albertosaurus will need to do is grab him by the throat or rip open his belly. Those sharp serrated teeth can cut through flesh like a hot knife through butter. When you calculate the dimensions of the jaws of this big meat eater, you can see they can bite off and swallow 100 pounds of flesh in every single bite.
The Arctic was changing forever. It would go from a wasteland to a lush paradise for animals of all kinds. But it would not be kind to the Arctic dinosaur. It was headed for extinction, and its demise would be vicious and painful. 70 million years ago, in what is now Canada, 2 Albertosaurus charged a herd of Pachyrhinosaurus, causing a stampede towards a flooding river. The Albertosaurus had a fast metabolism like the birds of today. This forced it to feed frequently to replenish its energy.
Because of their lower center of gravity, dinosaurs like Pachyrhinosaurus would have been able to recover quickly from a fall. They have very powerful front and rear legs, and this makes getting back up if you fall a lot easier. As quickly as it knocked them down, it's back up on its feet again.
The Pachyrhinosaurus had legs as thick as a grown man's waist. They were also relatively dense, like the legs of an elephant, not as hollow as those of the Albertosaurus.
The thin legs of Albertosaurus are its weak spot because it wouldn't take much force to crack or even break the leg bones. But because they're relatively thin, they're a smaller target. The Pachyrhinosaurus misses the bone and only rips the skin, and this enrages the Albertosaurus, who then goes for broke.
The Cretaceous period was not as hot as the Jurassic. The temperatures were still hotter than today, but the relatively cooler climate allowed the dinosaurs to be more active. This was an advantage for the meat eaters, who expended more energy in the fight than the plant eaters. The Albertosaurus also had a cavernous stomach. It could have eaten a cow in a single meal. Its endless appetite drove it to savage butchery.
The Albertosaurus paces back and forth, pushing the herd into a tighter formation. From experience, it knows that if they're packed in too tight, then they'll lose their ability to move independently, and that's when he'll strike.
The brain of the Pachyrhinosaurus can only think of one thing at a time. They react, they do not plan. If they're focused on an attacker, they're not attuned to their environment.
One by one, the Pachyrhinosaurus are being pushed into the river as the herd moves back. Normally, these dinosaurs would be able to swim without any trouble, but now they're in panic mode, and it's every dinosaur for himself. In their struggle to get away from the Albertosaurus, they begin to drown each other.
The Pachyrhinosaurus would swim like a dog, holding its head above water and paddling with its feet. This was impossible when they were too tightly packed together. The Albertosaurus was not a good swimmer. Its small arms were useless in the water, leaving it to rely on its 2 powerful legs.
Even though the Albertosaurus is capable of swimming, there is no way it's going to get into a flooded river. But the sight of the herd floating downstream is too much for him to ignore, so he heads off to follow the river and look for an opportunity to snatch one from the water.
The protective frill of the Pachyrhinosaurus was capable of showing color. It may have reflected the emotions of a Pachy, like a billboard.
bodies came to the bend in the river, the momentum of the water pushed their carcasses to the outer edge of the bend. There, their bodies became intertwined with each other and started a mass pileup. Once the floodwaters receded, the exposed bodies began to rot.
At the end of the Arctic Age, floods were becoming more common. The smell of the drowned carcasses would draw predators from miles around. Some predators of that time could smell prey up to 5 miles away.
There are countless examples of modern animals that, when trying to cross a river, things can turn into sheer carnage. It happens with wildebeest, it happens with caribou, it happens time and time again. And each time it occurs, predators either cause it or show up very quickly to take advantage of it. The evidence at Pipestone Creek proves that these animals were killed in mass and then covered in mud in a bend in a river. And Albertosaurus were there to feast on the remains.
Albertosaurus and Pachyrhinosaurus. You are about to see a graphic depiction of a violent prehistoric battle. Viewer discretion is advised. 65 million years ago, where South Dakota is today. A lone duckbill is searching for food. The evidence tells us he has become separated from his herd.
In his search for other members of his own kind, the Admonosaurus wanders aimlessly into the forest. His small brain is struggling to adjust to being alone. He has no idea that he's walking right into the center of the territory of a pack of Dromaeosaurus.
Dromaeosaurus. It is the scientific name for raptors. It means swift-running lizard, and that is how they hunted. They would ambush their prey and run them down. Usually, they would take on smaller prey, but if a large herbivore stumbled across their path, they would attack by instinct.
Waiting for the opportune moment to attack, the Dromaeosaurus remained motionless. Then the Admonosaurus walks into view. Its size is immense compared to these little raptors. The rest of the pack won't attack until the alpha makes a move. Instinct tells her to leave this giant animal alone, but seeing the intruder standing right in the middle of her turf is more than she can take, so she launches the attack.
The duckbill had a thick hide and the ability to shake rapidly to throw off attackers. Raptors had terrific balance and were able to land on their feet like cats.
With lightning speed, the Raptors launch their second attack. This time, they focus on the skull and the neck of the duckbill. Although their claws are sharp, the hide of this Admonosaurus is really tough and hard to penetrate, so they target a thinner section, and that is the neck.
Raptors were smart enough to target their attacks to vulnerable areas, such as the eyes and throat. The idea was to disable their victims quickly and watch them bleed to death, to avoid a protracted fight that could lead to injury.
Now on its hind legs, it's in a position to use its massive weight to its advantage. Waiting for the right moment, it leans forward and crashes to the ground, crushing one of the raptors under its front foot.
Raptors had hollow bones like birds. Even the force of a wooden baseball bat would have broken them in half. But scientists now know something else. That raptors communicated using quick hand gestures.
Raptors, like Dromaeosaurus, have fairly complex brains for a dinosaur. What makes them such efficient killers is that they have the ability to react to a situation in relatively short order. Launching a simultaneous attack is a very effective maneuver when attacking something as big as Edmontosaurus.
The Edmontosaurus skin was up to 3 inches thick and was covered with small, round, armor-like calluses.
Because the duckbill's hide is so thick, the raptors are unable to score a decisive blow. But in their case, quantity is just as effective as quality. If they can continue to inflict enough small wounds, the loss of blood will have the same effect as one major injury. This slash and dash approach works well for the raptors, and it keeps them out of harm's way.
Smarter, faster, and better armed, the raptor pack continues to launch an endless barrage of attacks. But they have no idea that they've attracted attention. The monster of the prehistoric world is about to hit the scene. A three-way battle is about to erupt. A single male duckbill, unaware of his surroundings, has walked directly into the den of a pack of raptors. The raptor's assault would often be led by an alpha female. The rest of the pack would mimic how and where she attacked. With larger prey, the strategy would be to surround the victim and overwhelm it.
There's just no way he can continue to fight these smaller but faster adversaries. If he can make it out of the forest and into the open, he'll have the advantage. There, he'll have the room to swing that massive tail. One hit on that tail on those lightly built raptors will turn them to mush.
Raptors were typically cautious creatures, but once they tasted blood in a fight, they were overcome by adrenaline. Almost nothing could make them break off the attack. Their brains focused on only one thing: finishing their prey. This would send them into a fighting frenzy.
These raptors know every inch of the terrain. They have a particular spot where they're going to try to drive the duckbill towards. If they can drive him into it, he'll never see the light of day again.
Typically used to balance its massive frame, was reinforced by a series of interconnecting rods that made it stiff but strong, making it a potent weapon that could be swung like the arm of a crane. The T-Rex was able to sense vibrations through the pads at its feet, allowing it to track large herbivores.
Tyrannosaurus Rex is capable of picking up vibrations through the pads of its feet. The sound waves created by the battle are transmitted through the ground, into the feet, up the skeleton, and then into the inner ear. So T-Rex is able to feel the battle through his feet. Every time the Edmontosaurus stomps its foot, it creates a ground tremor, and the Rex uses those tremors to zero in on the target.
Edmontosaurus's tail was attached to powerful muscles, enabling it to swing with surprising speed. Raptors used a variety of psychological tricks when fighting. This included rushing at the victim's face to confuse it. It was also able to mimic noises, perhaps even echoing the sounds of its prey.
Although these cuts to the throat are not deep, the alpha continues to attack the same spot over and over again. These raptors have succeeded in driving this 4-ton meal right onto their dinner plate.
T-Rex had a superior sense of smell, more powerful even than today's dogs. It could have picked up the scent of blood from miles away. This would immediately send it running.
Predators are opportunistic, and the bigger they are, the more opportunities they have. Unfortunately for the Raptors, their battle has attracted the attention of the biggest opportunist in North America, and they don't call him the king for nothing.
Raptors would never fight a T-Rex.
These Raptors are just outgunned. There is no way they're going to stay and fight. Heck, they won't even stay and challenge this monster. They'll do what small predators have always had to do when someone bigger takes their food. They just have to wait their turn and hope he leaves some scraps.
The Tyrannosaurus Rex had massive jaws. Able to open almost 5 feet wide, it could clamp down around the tail of even the largest herbivores. The T-Rex neck was the width of a grown man's waist and incredibly strong. It could act like a massive steam shovel in picking up prey that weighed over 5 tons. While it didn't fear other predators, it would still drag its prey back to its own territory like a lion would to avoid a potential fight.
Although that tail has meat on it, the most sought-after parts of the carcass lie between the neck and the hips, and that's the part that Tyrannosaurus Rex carries off. These raptors have put in way too much energy to just walk away from this meal. Their role has now changed from hunter to scavenger. It's a survival mechanism that all predators share. Pride is not a dinosaur trait. Living to fight another day is.
Raptors were fearless fighters. They did not fear any other dinosaur in the world, except the T-Rex. Tyrannosaurus was simply king of the world. Even a pack of raptors was no match for this nightmarish monster, who was the most ferocious predator of all time. After colliding with another asteroid millions of miles from Earth, fragments of the Baptistina asteroid are thrown into space. 110 million years ago, one of those pieces struck the moon. And now another even larger piece is speeding towards Earth. Planet Earth. 65 million years ago. 24 hours to impact. As dinosaurs on the dark side of the Earth sleep, those on the other side go about their daily business of survival. Plant eaters continue to graze, while predators seek opportunities to make a kill. They are unaware that an asteroid streaks through space towards them. What appears as just another star among the millions of stars in space, the asteroid moves closer. 12 hours to impact. The island of Madagascar. A male Majungatholus is on the hunt for prey. His attention attention is focused on his next meal.
The male is tracking his prey. Using his senses, he moves closer to his quarry. As soon as he's close enough, he'll attack. But unknown to him, moments from now, food will be the last thing on his mind.
Halfway around the world, in what will become South Dakota, a family of Tyrannosaurus rex makes their way towards a river to drink.
Tyrannosaurs are family animals. They live in groups because it gives them a better chance at survival. Hunting together makes it easier to ambush and capture prey, and keeping their young nearby offers them protection from rivals. They're the biggest land predators on Earth, but even their might is no match for nature's fury.
3 hours to impact. Unknown to Earth's inhabitants, 129,000 miles away, the asteroid is moving at a speed of 43,000 miles per hour. Now, within 25,000 miles of Earth, the asteroid begins to glow as the light of the sun begins to illuminate it. The Earth's gravitational pull begins to draw it closer, causing it to speed up. Deep within a forest in prehistoric Texas, a group of raptors uses the trees to shade themselves from the intense sun. No amount of trees will be able to shade them from the heat that is about to set in on planet Earth. By midday, the temperatures now reach 90 degrees. Those in the northern hemisphere can now see a bright light in the sky.
The night before the impact, the asteroid appears in the sky as some new bright star. But by morning, this star remains in the sky and can be seen in total daylight. Nothing can stop it. No force can alter its course. Earth and her inhabitants are about to be introduced to a Baptistina asteroid.
30 minutes to impact. The asteroid now appears much larger. Silently, it closes the gap between it and the planet. Life below begins to stir. 10 minutes to impact. The asteroid continues its journey. It grows ever larger in the summer sky. As it draws closer, animals begin to panic.
Things are starting to heat up in the atmosphere. This triggers intense electrical storms throughout the planet. These storms won't be there for much longer.
5 minutes to impact. The sky is now illuminated by the glowing orb as it draws closer. The asteroid begins to heat up as it comes into contact with our atmosphere. The dinosaurs are starting to cook.
The temperatures begin to rise very quickly as this enormous rock begins to heat up. The plants and trees beneath it begin to smoke and then spontaneously combust under its intense heat. The world is about to catch fire.
1 minute to impact. Most of the Earth's forests are now engulfed in flames. The water in lakes and rivers begins to boil.
With the sound of 1,000 freight trains, the giant asteroid bears down on the planet. Its target, the Yucatan Peninsula. The asteroid is so big, as the first part hits the Earth, the rear of the asteroid is still 30,000 feet in the air. That's the height that most commercial airliners fly.
With the force of 1,000,000 nuclear bombs, it explodes. The sound can be heard worldwide. The Earth shudders under the impact. Superheated air expands away from the impact site, faster than the speed of sound. Anything in its wake will vaporize.
In Texas, the Raptors turn to look towards the explosion. They're blinded by the light, and within minutes are vaporized when a wall of wind, fire, and toxins rush past them. What was once a vibrant forest is now a total wasteland.
As the wall of wind continues moving away from the strike zone, an enormous plume of fire, smoke, and ash rockets skyward.
Within 5 minutes, the debris from the impact has been thrown over 30,000 feet into the air. Some of the smaller pieces are thrown above our atmosphere, but are pulled back down by the Earth's gravitational pull.
The plume of ash and dust begins to fan out across the horizon, carried by the jet streams. Halfway around the world, on the island of Madagascar, the dinosaurs go into panic mode. Their island has been spared by the fires, but the shockwave made by the sound passes directly overhead. Something more dangerous is coming towards them.
The impact of the asteroid in the ocean has now created a series of tsunamis that race across the oceans, destroying everything they come in contact with. The first wave to hit Madagascar is somewhat repelled by the dense forest. For the moment, the Majungatholus are safe, but the next wave to hit it is 3 miles high. It completely engulfs the entire island and kills everything in its wake. This island went from a dense jungle filled with life to a war-torn, lifeless pile of sand.
In the Yucatan Peninsula, where there was once solid ocean floor, a 180-mile-wide crater now exists. A plume of fire, smoke, and ash billow into the sky and begin to fan out across the horizon. For the plants and animal life farther from the impact, it's just a matter of time. Trillions of particles thrown into space begin to re-enter the atmosphere and rain down on Earth. As they re-enter, they burst into flames. The rain of fire begins to ignite the remainder of Earth's biomass.
The entire Earth is slowly being engulfed in darkness caused by the smoke and ash. What light remains is being generated by the worldwide forest fires. The Tyrannosaurus family has never faced anything like this before. A wall of superheated dirt and ash engulfs the family. The ash is so hot and caustic, it literally sears their lungs and flesh and cooks them from the inside out.
With the death and destruction brought on by the asteroid impact, it's easy to understand why dinosaurs and so many other creatures were wiped from the planet.